you to another edition of Parking Pin Gear. Okay, I hope you've been subscribing and following the videos, right? Because I often refer to older videos. Okay, and you know that recently I've done a series on basically small amps that would be suitable for like a coffee house gig kind of things. So this excludes like basically amps above 10 watts, and that can be solid state or tube. Okay, and recently I had picked up a Fender Frontman 10G. Very pleased with it, actually. Now keep in mind I use a bass amp and crossovers and things, right, which gives me the ability that basically the bass handles the low end, and the little tiny amps, right, like the Frontman 10G, handles the mids and trebles, basically, right? And when you put them together, you get a really big sound. Okay, so in any case, and I mean, recently I had ordered another Fender Frontman 10G because I like to play in stereo, so I use two amps, one left, one right, you know. It gives me that really nice stereo spread sound-wise. And I mean, I had picked up these Fender Frontman Gs for not a lot of money, really, you know. In fact, I had gotten one for locally for 25 bucks, which was hard to believe. So I went looking around, you know, trying to find another one, and I took a gamble, and I made an offer of $30, I think it was. And because the guy showed just the box and not the actual amp, so I didn't know really what I was bidding on other than the box. But I took a chance, and well, when I received it, it was freaking, you know, well, it looked brand new and came with some bonuses, a cable and some picks and things, and sounded as good as the one I had. In fact, probably maybe even a little better. The speaker wasn't blown on these little amps. A lot of times when you get them used, you know, the speaker is just shot, you know, because it's been abused, basically, you know. People turning it up too much, you know, and then the speaker is not blown, but it has a tendency to fart out, you know. In any case, that had been my experience. So, just to update you, well, I went back to that guy and I said, hey, you have any more of those? And sure enough, he did. He had two more. So I grabbed them up, and I'll either, hopefully they'll be in the same condition as the one I got, and I'll either keep them and play them or sell them, one of the two. Now, another thing that caught my eye, right, especially when I looked around on these small little amps, right, these people, they charge, you know, what, $40, $45 for these little amps. But then they get you in shipping, right? And they overprice the shipping to as much as the amp, you know, $45, $50, right? Well, for that price, you might as well buy new, you know, honestly. So I wasn't going to do that, certainly. However, this little amp was on Facebook Marketplace, and it was local, you know. And for the price, I just couldn't resist, you know. It was straight. Well, okay, he was asking $45, but I offered $40 for it, you know. Be something to mess around with. And it looked to be in just great condition. And in fact, you can hear it here. This is what I've been playing. Guys, this is the amp that I picked up for $40. I got it today, and well, at first I didn't get any response, and I was like, man, that's kind of, you know, what's the deal? I made an offer, you know, if it's not available, just tell me so I'm not wasting my time. I can move on, right? Well, I emailed him again, and I said, hey, did you get my message? You know, because I hadn't heard a response. And he's just not on there very much. And finally I got a hold of him, and he was like, yeah, that's a good deal. So I met him locally, picked up the amp, and man, it looked great. It's a little bit bigger than the Frontman 10G, but definitely its competitor, and it's the Marshall, right? MG10 CD, as opposed to the Frontman 10G. And by the way, I believe they changed the name on later models of this Marshall amp to be called the MG10G. Right? In other words, instead of Frontman 10G, it's MG10G. Which is kind of funny, you know, obviously competing between the two amps. Alright, and let's take a look at it here. And there it is. This is the Marshall 10G. Right? And there's a little Frontman 10G. And I'm sorry, this is the Marshall MG10 CD. Right? So it's obviously a little bit bigger than the Fender, but it's plenty loud, you know. I'm surprised even. And my goodness, if you're using it for high gain, I hit the high gain switch by mistake, and man, was it loud. Oh my. But clean, you know, it's reasonable level. In fact, right now I have it at about 3, yeah, something like that. Now, interestingly, while the Fender has basically a volume, a bass, and a treble, right, for the clean channel, the Marshall's a bit different because it has a volume, right, and then that last button there, let me see if I can show it to you, right there, yeah, that last knob is called contour. And basically, as far as I can tell, it's kind of a tone volume. In other words, as you turn it up, it gets brighter. Right? And I've got it pretty way down. In fact, almost to zero, because I don't want a bright sound. But we'll mess with that later. So here it is. So I plugged it in, and at first I was really disappointed. I was like, uh-oh. Because it's kind of noisy, really. But as I messed with it, I realized I had it turned way too high and those kinds of things. And in fact, you can hear the noise here. I'm going to turn it up and you can hear it. And it's not that it's noisy, it's that it can pick up noise really a lot. So here it is turned up all the way. You hear that? And a lot of that is my pedals, sadly. You know, they should be quieter, but they're not. So let me turn it back down. There we go. But see, now it's pretty darn quiet. You know, so I think I just had to dial in the settings. We compare that to the Fender. Yeah, that same amp noise is there, but now I'm going to turn up the volume to 10. Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing, you know. So now it's just a question of tone. And so as far as noise goes, really, they're kind of the same. And sadly, it's my pedals on my pedal board making that digital noise. Or, I suppose it could be the cables, too. You know, because I'm just using kind of, you know, whatever cables I had laying around. And they're not always the best, you know. Anyway, so as you can tell, when you turn it up all the way, there's a lot of noise, right? And I was like, oh man. But when you turn it down, it's fine, actually. Okay, and just to give you an idea, I'm going to play the same thing once on the Frontman 10G and one on the Marshall. Okay, 10 CD. Okay, so here's the Fender. Oh, and keep in mind, on the right side, just to keep it stereo, I have this pedal, power amp pedal, Thunder 99 from Harley Benton. And it's actually really great. I'm not kidding you. It doesn't have any volume, or I'm sorry, it doesn't have any tone settings whatsoever. It's just volume. But the sound is just great. Okay, anyway. So here we go. Here's the Fender Frontman 10G. Okay, now here's the Marshall. Right? They both sound great to me. In fact, I'm quite pleased once I got the settings on the Marshall more to what I'm accustomed to. Because when I first plugged it in, it was like Noise City, and I was like, oh man. You know, but that's not the case. If you, you know, set the settings the way you want them, it sounds pretty darn good. So I've got a loop here I made, and I'll just play it through both amps. Okay, So again, we'll start with the Fender. Okay, so here we go. Here's a Fender Frontman 10G. Okay, so there's the Fender. Now let's try the Marshall. Here we go. This is a Marshall MG10 CD. There you go. So, to my ears, the Marshall sounds a little bit more open. You know, it doesn't sound quite as boxy as the Fender. And it would stand to reason because the Marshall has a bigger cabinet, right? Okay, so there's the Marshall, and I'll play that Fender again. Hold on. Okay, so here's the Fender. is a Fender. And, well, there you go. That's the difference between the Fender and the Marshall. Honestly, I'd be happy with either one of these. I can't really say one's better than the other. However, I think the Marshall's a little bit more tricky to dial in, sound-wise, with the contour thing, you know, and this, yeah, my bad, it's not a tone control, it's a volume control. So it's gain and volume for the overdrive channel, but for the clean channel it just has a volume and then that contour knob, you know. Whereas the Fender, right, has a volume knob as well, but has a working bass and treble. And the contour knob kind of acts as a bass treble. Now, in its favor, the Fender is smaller. No doubt about it, you know. It's kind of a smaller than the Marshall, you know. However, as a result, it's a little bit boxy compared to the Marshall. I don't know if that will sway you one way or another. So anyway, I wanted to show you this little Marshall, and I actually really like it, you know. It's different than the Fender, but it definitely has its own sound. Is it worth $40? Definitely. And quite frankly, I've been messing around with little amps, like the Fender, and now the Marshall, the Orange Crush 12, the Bugera T5, 5-watt head, the Joyo Blue Jay amp, and the power amp pedal, and deciding which ones to keep and which ones to sell, you know. And, well, these little tiny amps are just perfect for just handling the mids and the highs, you know, because on their own, you know, without the bass amp and things, well, they sound puny, right? But man, you add that bass amp, and these act like little satellites, you know, just handling the mids and the highs, and they're great at doing that. Not so much so at handling the low end, let's put it that way. But yeah, that's why I've had a lot of fun trying out the different amps, you know. And I don't know, maybe I should get another Marshall, like this one, you know, or I could sell it and just stick with the Fenders. I don't know. Or the Orange Crush 12, which I haven't even shown you, which is another little tiny amp, you know. But I find it very interesting that just like the larger amps, you know, like the Marshall GSL 40C versus the Fender Deluxe Reverb, you know. Well, here it's the same kind of thing, except they're little tiny amps, right? Fender versus Marshall. Wow. Alright, well, let me know what you think, which, you know, and also cosmetically, you know, maybe some people like the Marshall better than the Fender as far as looks go, you know. And the Marshall certainly looks beefy, you know, and is a little bit bigger than the Fender. Alright, so there you go, there's the two different amps. Alright, very good, I'll see you next time.